Don't call your husband. Call a taxi and get out through the bathroom window, the old woman whispered right into my ear as she slipped a thick wad of cash into my hand, right in the middle of my candlelit honeymoon dinner. She'd waited until the exact second my husband stepped away to answer his phone. For a moment, I was sure it had to be some kind of sick joke, a prank, or a misunderstanding. I had no idea that one sentence was about to save my life. Before I tell you what happened after that, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And honestly, after what I went through, I need as many people as possible to hear this story. Because if it could happen to me on my honeymoon in Switzerland, it could happen to anyone. Snow was falling outside the restaurant window in slow, heavy flakes, turning the alpine town into a postcard. From our table on the second floor of Hotel Bellevue, I could see the jagged peaks glowing silver under the moonlight black against a clear winter sky. Inside, the world was all warmth and soft violin music, crystal glasses and low laughter. I smoothed the silk of my cream scarf over my hair, checked that it matched the simple evening dress I'd bought just for this trip, and told myself I was the luckiest woman alive. My name is Hannah, and 3 weeks earlier, I had married the man I thought was my miracle. Ryan had that easy, disarming smile that made every room feel safer. He was handsome, successful, endlessly patient, and he treated every part of my messy past as something to protect, not judge. After years of juggling part-time jobs and night classes, after losing my mom and carrying that grief alone, suddenly I was in Switzerland, in one of the most expensive hotels I'd ever seen, with a husband who acted like I was the center of his universe. He kept saying, "Only the best for our honeymoon, babe." And I believed him. I believed every word. The waiter glided over with dessert. Molten chocolate cake for me, creme brulee for Ryan, the smell of dark cocoa and burnt sugar curling up in the warm air. Ryan winked and cracked the caramel top of his dessert with the back of his spoon. I had just lifted my first bite when his phone buzzed against the wooden table, the sound suddenly crude and loud in the delicate atmosphere. Ryan glanced at the screen. For less than a second, his face changed, brows knotting, jaw tightening, all the warmth wiped clean. Then, in a blink, the mask slid back into place. "Give me a minute, sweetheart," he said softly. "Work. Clients in Jakarta never sleep." He kissed my forehead, grabbed his phone, and walked out across the dining room toward the lobby. I watched his broad back disappear through the big wooden doors. A little knot of unease settled in my chest. That flash of cold anger on his face hadn't looked like a client being difficult. It had looked like something else, something I didn't recognize in the man I'd married. I forced myself to breathe, told myself not to be paranoid, and turned back to my cake. That was when the presence at my side made me freeze. She was suddenly there, so close I could smell eucalyptus oil and fear on her skin. I'd noticed her earlier, sitting alone near the window, a tiny woman in a simple batik skirt under a heavy gray coat. I'd assumed she was just another tourist. Up close I saw the deep lines of age and hardship on her face, and eyes so flooded with raw terror that my stomach cramped. She didn't look at my face at first. Her hand darted out with a thief's quickness, grabbing my fingers where they rested in my lap. Her palm was ice cold and shaking violently as she pushed something into my hand, a stack of crisp Swiss franc notes, thick and stiff. "Don't call your husband," she whispered, voice hoarse and trembling but fierce. "Call a taxi, go to the lobby restroom, climb out through the window, right now, hurry." My mind went blank. For a moment I thought I'd misheard her. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I tried to pull my hand back, but her grip tightened with shocking strength. Then her eyes finally met mine, dark and shining with tears. "Don't trust him," she hissed. "Don't trust Ryan. This is a trap. Your life and your money are in danger. Go while he's still outside." Before I could react, she let me go and hurried away, almost stumbling, vanishing toward the far end of the restaurant. I sat there frozen, heart hammering, my palms slick with sweat around the money. Your life and your money. It made no sense. I wasn't rich. My mom had left me a modest house and some savings, nothing compared to Ryan's glossy lifestyle. The only explanation my panicked brain could find was that the old woman was confused, maybe mentally ill, maybe mistaking me for someone else. I exhaled shakily. I would give the money back, check on her, and clear this up. I pushed my chair back, ready to head toward the restrooms where she disappeared, when my eyes drifted past the dining room, through the glass toward the lobby. I saw Ryan. He was in a shadowed corner near an emergency exit, not on the phone at all. He was in a heated conversation with two tall men in long black coats that looked more suited to a crime thriller than a luxury resort. Their posture screamed threat. Ryan's hands were flying as he talked, jabbing the air, shoulders tight with fury. Under the dim lobby lights, his face was hard, merciless, a stranger's face. This wasn't a stressed businessman. This was someone negotiating something ugly. I watched, throat dry, as the men turned away. Ryan scanned the lobby with an impatient, predatory look. The old woman tried to slip out of the same door. Ryan moved like a striking snake. He grabbed her arm so roughly I could see her flinch even from up on the restaurant level and yanked her back inside. Her eyes went wide with panic. Just before the lobby swallowed them both, she twisted her head toward the street. For a heartbeat, her gaze lined up perfectly with the restaurant window. I didn't know if she could see me, but I saw her. Then she was gone. The room spun. Her warning was not crazy. It was the only honest thing in that hotel. I didn't think anymore. Instinct snapped into place. I scooped my bag off the chair, shoved the money inside, and walked, too fast, too stiffly, out of the dining room, away from the lobby. No one stopped me. The hotel staff smiled politely as I passed, and I felt like I was underwater, moving through a world that no longer matched what I knew. I followed the signs to the lobby restroom, shoulders tight, expecting at any second to feel Ryan's hand on my arm. The ladies' room was empty, all marble, gold fixtures, and a faint smell of citrus cleaner. I locked myself into the biggest stall, my hands shaking so hard I could barely work the latch. "Window," I whispered. I climbed onto the toilet and looked up. There it was, a big frosted glass window high in the wall meant for light and air, not escape. The metal latch was stiff with ice. I yanked once, nothing. Twice, still stuck. Panic rose, hot and choking. Somewhere in my bag, my phone buzzed. I didn't need to look at the screen to know whose name was glowing there. I groped blindly, found the phone, flipped it to silent, and shoved it back into my purse. "I'm sorry, Ryan," I whispered, though I wasn't sure I was talking to my husband or to the illusion I'd married. I braced my feet, wrapped both hands around the latch, and wrenched with everything I had. With a screech of metal, it finally gave. The window swung inward, and a fist of freezing air punched me in the face, shocking me into clarity. Outside, the hotel's private garden lay buried under snow, the drop from the window maybe 2 meters at most, high enough to twist an ankle, low enough that I had no excuse not to jump. I hauled myself up, my dress catching and tearing on something sharp, and threw my bag out first. Then I slid through the frame and dropped. I hit the deep snow on my side, one shoe flying off, ice stabbing through the thin fabric of my dress. There was no time to think about pain. I scrambled up, half running, half stumbling through the drifts toward the low fence that separated the garden from the street. I clambered over it, landed hard on the cleared sidewalk, and nearly fell again as my bare foot met slick stone. A single taxi was rolling slowly down the quiet road. I lurched into the street, waving my arms like a madwoman. The driver slammed on the brakes, staring at me. A woman in a torn evening dress, headscarf askew, one high heel, shaking like a leaf in a snowstorm. I flung open the back door and tumbled in. "Just drive," I gasped in broken English. "Please, just go anywhere away from that hotel." The taxi pulled away. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call, but a message. "Where are you? Don't play games with me, Hannah." The words turned my blood to ice. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, concern etched into his tired face. "Miss, where do you want to go? Hospital? Police?" I thought of walking into a Swiss police station, trying to explain that my charming husband had just manhandled an old woman and that a stranger had given me money and told me to flee. I imagined them calling Ryan to the station, listening to his calm, reasonable voice as he told them his new wife was hysterical after the wedding. Number one, I needed somewhere he couldn't control so easily. "Embassy," I croaked. "Please, the Indonesian embassy in Bern." The driver nodded, relieved to have a destination. "It's far," he said. "Over an hour." "It's fine," I said, tugging the old woman's money out of my bag with numb fingers. "I'll pay. Just get me there." As we drove past the hotel, I looked back. Under the front awning, I saw Ryan burst out, eyes wild, scanning the street. Behind him, the old woman tried to slip away. He grabbed her again, dragging her inside with brutal force. For a second, her eyes met mine through the taxi's rear window. I pressed my palm to the glass as the car turned the corner and she vanished from sight. I started to cry, silent, ugly sobs shaking through my frozen body. I had saved myself. I had left my rescuer behind. The highway from the mountains to Bern blurred into a nightmare of headlights and shadows. Every car behind us felt like it might be Ryan's. My phone kept lighting up on the seat beside me. Calls, messages, alternating threats and fake concern. "We can talk. You don't know what you're doing. You're in danger alone. Let me help you." I turned it face down. The danger was sitting in a tuxedo back at Hotel Bellevue. After what felt like a lifetime, the taxi rolled through quiet streets and stopped in front of a large gated building with the Indonesian flag hanging limp in the cold night air. It was after midnight, the windows mostly dark. I paid the driver more than enough. He hesitated, then drove away, leaving me alone in the freezing silence. I ran to the gatehouse, banging on the glass. "Please," I begged in my own language, breath fogging the air. "I'm Indonesian. I'm in danger." The Swiss security guard stared at me, then quickly called inside. Minutes later, the iron gate buzzed and swung open. A young Indonesian staff member in a sweater and jeans hurried down the steps. "Ma'am, come in," he said, eyes wide as he took in my dress, my bare foot, my shaking hands. He introduced himself as Evan and brought me into a small waiting room, wrapped me in a blanket, and pushed a mug of hot tea into my fingers. "You're safe here," he said gently. "What happened? Were you robbed?" "My husband," I said. My voice cracked. "I think my husband is dangerous. I ran away from him." I told him everything in broken, tumbling sentences. The dinner, the phone call, the old woman's warning, the money, the way Ryan had grabbed her in the lobby. Evan listened, nodding, his face full of sympathy. Then he asked for my full name and my husband's. "Hannah Surya," I said. "My husband is Ryan Blake." The moment I said those names together, something shifted in his expression. The warmth in his eyes cooled, replaced by the careful blankness of someone remembering instructions. He repeated our names under his breath, stood up and said, "Thank you, Ms. Hannah. You really are safe here. I'll get my supervisor, Mr. Wilson, the deputy ambassador. Please don't go anywhere." Then he left, closing the door behind him. The silence pressed in. 15 minutes crawled by. My relief at being safe thinned out into a new kind of dread. Evan's change of expression had been too sharp to ignore. My eyes drifted to the desk in the corner where a computer screen glowed. I couldn't sit still. I shuffled over, sat down, and opened a browser. I typed Ryan Blake into the search bar. Corporate profiles, property deals, smiling headshots. Everything looked clean. Then, on impulse, I typed my own name. Hannah Surya, Inheritance. An old financial news article from Indonesia popped up, published 5 years earlier, right after my mom's car accident. My heart pounded as I clicked. The headline mentioned a Surya family inheritance dispute and frozen assets in Swiss banks. I read on, numb. My grandfather had been a wealthy businessman. He'd left everything to my mother, not to her younger brother, my Uncle Harold. Furious, he had taken her to court, claiming she wasn't the rightful heir. To protect the assets, my mother had moved a huge portion of them, far more than I ever knew existed, into investments and gold stored in a private Swiss bank. More importantly, she'd locked them in a trust with a peculiar clause. The fortune could only be released to me, her only child, once I turned 25, or once I got married. 3 months ago, I'd turned 25. 3 weeks ago, I'd married Ryan Blake. The screen blurred as the pieces slammed into place. The door opened. I snapped the browser shut and spun around. Evan stood there, pale and stiff. Behind him walked Ryan. He was no longer in a tux, but in neatly pressed jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking casual, relaxed, perfectly at home. 2 big men in suits flanked him like shadows. "Baby," Ryan said with that soft voice that had once made me feel safe. "There you are. You scared everyone half to death." I stumbled backward until I hit the wall. "How did you—" "I called the obvious places," he said, stepping into the room while Evan quietly slipped out. "Police, hospitals, and of course our embassy. I told them my wife had a panic attack and ran off. They were very helpful." The embassy, I realized, wasn't a refuge, it was another trap. Ryan held out his hand. "Come on, Hannah, you're freezing. Let's go back to the hotel and talk this through like adults." I shook my head, words stuck in my throat. "I saw you grab that woman," I whispered. The one who told me to run. You hurt her." For a fraction of a second his smile flickered, then it returned, smooth as glass. "She was unstable," he said. "She gave you money, didn't she? Probably drugged it. The hotel doctor is with her now." Every word tasted like poison. No one here believed me. They believed the calm, successful husband over the half-dressed, barefoot woman. I realized if I fought openly, I'd lose. I needed to play along. I forced my shoulders to sag, let tears spill over. "I don't know what to think," I whispered. "I'm scared." She sounded so convincing. Ryan's eyes softened, or pretended to. "I know, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. You're exhausted. Let's go home, okay?" I nodded slowly. "Okay. Just, can I use the restroom first? I look a mess. I need to wash my face." He hesitated. 2 security men in embassy uniforms hovered near the doorway, obviously on his side. After a few seconds, Ryan smiled again. 10 minutes, he said. "We'll wait in the lobby with Mr. Wilson." He pointed down the hall. "Bathrooms that way. Don't take too long." I walked out with my head bowed, acting defeated. As soon as I was out of sight, my legs sped up. The bathroom was small, starkly lit, with a single stall and a sink. A tiny barred window sat near the ceiling, far too small for an adult to fit through. I locked the door, turned on the tap full blast to hide my movements, and pressed both hands to the cold porcelain. There was no way out. My brief hope collapsed into a rush of despair so strong I had to bite my lip to keep from screaming. Then I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tap against the wall. I turned off the faucet. The sound continued, coming from the barred window. I climbed onto the toilet and squinted through the cloudy glass. Outside was a narrow alley between the embassy and the neighboring building, dim and empty. "Hello?" I whispered. Another tap, then a rasping voice that made my heart leap. "Miss Hannah, hurry, open the window." It was her, the old woman. "I can't," I hissed. "There are bars." "Look under the sink," she answered. "I slipped something there when the staff weren't looking." I jumped down, groped under the basin, and felt cold metal wrapped in cloth. A screwdriver. For 1 second I wondered how on earth she'd managed it. There was no time to ask. I scrambled back up, wedged the screwdriver into the first screw holding the bars. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the tool. "Hurry," the woman urged from outside. Footsteps echoed faintly in the hall. "Hannah, you okay in there?" Ryan called, voice annoyingly gentle. "Almost done," I shouted back, forcing a tremor into my words. I dug my weight into the screwdriver. The first screw shrieked, then turned. 1. The second came out faster. 2. Sweat stung my eyes despite the cold. The third and fourth finally loosened, and the narrow metal frame came free. I lowered the bars to the floor, eased the window open, and felt the night's icy breath rush over my face again. Below, the alley yawned further than at the hotel, maybe 3 meters down onto a pile of trash bags. In the dimness, I could make out the old woman's face streaked with bruises, one arm purpling with finger marks. "Jump," she whispered. "I'll catch your bag. You'll land on the bags. You'll be fine." I tossed my purse down, heard it thump softly. Then I turned, braced my hands on the frame, and let myself fall. The landing knocked the air out of me and the stench of garbage rushed up, but the bags cushioned the impact. The woman, she later told me to call her Aunt May, hauled me to my feet with surprising strength. "Come on," she said. "My car's at the end of the alley." We ran. I was still in one borrowed sneaker from the taxi driver, my other foot in a hotel heel, lungs burning in the icy air. Behind us I heard a door bang open and Ryan's roar echo down the alley. "Hannah!" Aunt May threw open the door of a small sedan, shoved me into the passenger seat, and slid behind the wheel. The engine coughed, then roared to life. She sped away just as figures burst out of the alley behind us. For a few long seconds, no one spoke. I stared at her profile, the familiar batik, the bruises, the fierce line of her mouth. "I thought he had you," I said hoarsely, "back at the hotel." "He did," she said, "but he was more focused on yelling into his phone than watching an old woman." I bit his hand, ran through the kitchen, and got out. "I knew you'd go to the embassy. Your uncle has people in many places. I had to get there before they closed the net." "My uncle," I echoed. The word tasted bitter. "You know him?" She nodded. Harold Surya. He's the one who hired your husband. He had people in the embassy ready to hand you back if you tried anything. My husband, I repeated quietly. The word felt like a bad joke. You know who he really is? She nodded again. For 15 years I worked for your mother, she said. I know more than your uncle thinks. We drove in silence for a while, leaving the city lights behind. Eventually she pulled into a small roadside motel, paid cash, and led me into a simple room that smelled faintly of stale smoke and detergent. Once the door was triple locked, she finally sat heavily on the bed and looked straight at me. You're wondering why I'd risk my life for you, she said. You don't remember me, but I remember you. She told me her name, May Ward, though years ago I had apparently called her Aunt May. For 15 years she'd been my mother's personal assistant, the one who kept the Surya household running. Memories flickered to life. Cookies after school, gentle hands braiding my hair while my mother worked late. When your mother died, Aunt May continued, they told you it was a car accident. It wasn't. It was arranged by your uncle. She'd made the will in her favor, moved the assets to Switzerland, cut him off. He couldn't accept it. He threatened her. She collected proof and hid it in a safe deposit box here. She gave me one job. If anything happened to her, protect you and get you that key when you needed it. She opened a worn folder and took out an old-fashioned safe deposit key, heavy and cold. Harold fired me, threatened me, tried to scare me into silence, she said. I disappeared, but I never stopped watching you from a distance. When he stopped fighting in court 5 years ago, I knew he hadn't given up. He was waiting for you to turn 25 or to get married. Then 6 months ago, this perfect man appeared in your life out of nowhere. Too perfect, too fast. I sold my small house to hire an investigator. We found his real name, Milos Kolar, a con artist and contract killer wanted by Interpol. Your uncle paid him to marry you, bring you to Switzerland, get you to sign a power of attorney, and then stage an accident, just like your mother. I pressed my hands to my face. The room tilted. The bank, I whispered. The article said Zurich, a private bank, von Tobel. Aunt May nodded. Tomorrow morning at 9, Milos. Ryan has an appointment there. I bribed someone at the bank to learn the time. He'll arrive with a power of attorney that says he can control all your assets as your husband. If he gets in first, if he convinces them, it's over. The only thing that can stop him is what's in that box. She pressed the key into my palm. Your mother's evidence, his real identity, records of transfers from your uncle to him. If we can show that to the bank before they hand everything to a killer and a thief, we might save your inheritance and your life. By the time the motel's cheap wall clock said 3 in the morning, we had a plan. Aunt May dug clothes from her suitcase, a long dark skirt, a loose blouse, a simple navy headscarf, and a pair of worn sneakers. You can't walk into a Swiss bank in a torn evening gown and one heel, she said briskly. Peeling off my ruined honeymoon dress felt like shedding an entire version of myself, the gullible bride who believed in fairy tale husbands. In the cracked bathroom mirror, I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me, eyes swollen from crying, mouth set in a hard line. Fear was still there, but something colder had joined it. Anger. We leave now, Aunt May said. It's almost a 2-hour drive from Bern to Zurich. We have to get there before they do. The highway to Zurich at dawn looked nothing like the postcard views on the tourist brochures. It was all gray sky, dark trees, and the occasional blur of headlights in the rearview mirror that made my heart jump. Aunt May drove with fierce concentration, hands tight on the wheel. How did you even pay for all this? I asked quietly. The trip, the motel, the bribes. She gave a small, sad smile. I told you, I sold my house. Your mother saved my life years ago. I owed her. I wasn't going to let her daughter die the same way. I had no words. I just reached over and squeezed her bruised hand. Then we both owe her, I said. And we're both going to finish what she started. By the time we reached Zurich, pale daylight had washed the city in silver. Aunt May parked a few blocks away from Bank von Tobel on Bahnhofstrasse, the street of luxury boutiques and serious money. We stepped out into the cold, trying to look like we belonged among men in tailored coats and women in expensive boots. As we approached the bank, a sleek black Mercedes glided to a stop at the main entrance. Uncle Harold climbed out first, heavier than I remembered from old photos, wrapped in a cashmere coat and smug satisfaction. From the other side, Ryan, Milos emerged in a flawless suit, his hair perfectly styled, smiling like he owned the place. They shook hands with a senior banker waiting at the grand glass doors. "They're early," Aunt May muttered. "We have to be earlier where it counts." Instead of heading for the main lobby, she tugged me toward a side entrance marked Private Banking. The door was solid oak, discreet and heavy. A small camera blinked above it. Aunt May pressed the bell. After a pause, a click sounded and the door unlocked. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Quiet, thick carpet, dark wood paneling, and a single marble reception desk. Behind it sat a perfectly groomed woman in her 50s with ice blue eyes. She looked us up and down, my modest clothes, Aunt May's worn coat, and her expression barely changed, but I could feel the doubt radiating off her. "Good morning," she said in crisp English. "How can I help you?" Aunt May stepped forward with unexpected authority. "We're here to access a safe deposit box in the name of Almira Surya," she said, using my mother's full maiden name. The receptionist typed quickly, frowned, and nodded. "That box has been inactive for over 5 years," she said. "We know," Aunt May replied. The woman's gaze slid to me. "And you are?" "Her daughter," I said. "Hannah Surya. I'm the sole heir." My hands didn't shake as I pulled out my passport. I checked 100 times that it was still in my bag. She examined it under a scanner, then looked up at me with a shade more respect. "You understand that to access the box you need both identification and the original key?" I placed the heavy, old-fashioned key on the marble. For the first time, the receptionist looked genuinely surprised. "Very well," she said slowly. "There is one complication. Our system shows your husband, Mr. Ryan Blake, has an appointment this morning regarding the same account. He isn't here yet," I said quickly. "And as the legal owner, I'm instructing you to let me access my box now." It was a test. I could feel it. Bankers lived on rules and reputation. The woman hesitated, then picked up the phone and spoke rapidly in Swiss German. I stared at the elegant clock on the wall. It was 8:47. Every second felt like it might tip the balance. At last she hung up. "Mr. Hoffman, our vault manager, will see you now," she said. A glass door buzzed open behind her. We followed her down a hushed corridor to a private elevator that sank deep into the building. My ears popped as we went down to level B3. When the doors opened, it felt like stepping into another world. Cool, dry air, steel walls, a massive circular vault door like something from a heist movie. A thin man in a gray suit waited by the gate. "Mrs. Surya," he said with a tight nod. "I'm Hoffman. This way." He led us through the security protocols. Codes, fingerprint scans, before the huge door hissed open to reveal rows of gleaming safe deposit boxes. "Number 714, he murmured, guiding us to a corner. He inserted his own key into the lock. "Two-key system," he said. "Now yours, please." My fingers trembled as I slid my key into place and turned it. There was a mechanical click, and he pulled out a long, narrow metal box. "You can review the contents in a private room," he said. He took us into a small, windowless space with a table and 2 chairs, set the box down, and left, closing the door behind him. The clock on the wall read 8:56. "Quickly," Aunt May urged. I opened the lid. Inside, there were no gold bars, no sparkling jewels, only stacks of documents, a few labeled folders, some old-fashioned cassette tapes, and a small USB drive. On top lay an envelope with my name in my mother's handwriting. I tore it open. The letter was short, written in a steady, familiar script. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone and Harold has shown his true face. Don't cry. I've known this was coming. In this box is everything you need to destroy him. Proof of his crimes, records of his threats, the trail of his money. Don't be afraid to use it. I love you more than my own life." My vision blurred with tears. "She knew," I whispered. Aunt May touched my arm. "Look at the rest," she said. I opened the next folder. Inside were bank transfer records between offshore accounts in my uncle's name and an account connected to someone called Milos Kolar, dated from 6 months ago up until the week of my wedding. The USB was labeled in Aunt May's handwriting, "Harold Milos recording." At exactly 9 o'clock, the door hissed open. I looked up expecting Hoffman. Instead, Ryan filled the doorway in his perfect suit, Uncle Harold looming behind him. Hoffman stood in the corridor rigid, and beside him were the receptionist and an older man with silver hair and the kind of calm authority that screamed, "Director." "Ms. Surya," the director said smoothly, his English flawless. I'm Director Muller. I'm afraid there's been a development. 30 minutes ago, your husband presented a notarized power of attorney, signed by you, granting him full authority over your assets. Under Swiss law, we were obliged to act. This box is now frozen pending verification. You are not authorized to remove anything. It's a forgery, I said, heart racing. I never signed. Oh, you did, Ryan cut in, smiling. At the lawyer's office before the honeymoon. You were so excited about the trip you signed everything in front of you. Travel insurance, visa forms, a harmless little power of attorney. You really should read what you signed, babe. Harold chuckled, low and triumphant. Game over, Hannah. Hand the box to the bank. Hoffman reached for it. Aunt May moved faster than I'd ever seen her. She snatched the USB in the folder with the Interpol printout and payment records, then dumped the rest of the box onto the table. Papers and tapes spilled everywhere. That power of attorney is worthless, she snapped, staring straight at Muller, not at the men who wanted her dead. It was signed under a false identity. This man is not Ryan Blake. Ryan laughed softly. She's senile, he said. She was fired from our family years ago for stealing. Harold nodded vigorously. You don't seriously listen to a crazy ex-servant, do you? Muller's eyes narrowed. He was a banker, not a cop, but the words false identity and frozen assets clearly made him uneasy. These are very serious accusations, he said. Do you have anything to back them up? Yes, I said, finding my voice. You care about your bank's reputation. Imagine the headlines when people find out you helped an international fugitive and a murderer steal a fortune from his victim's daughter. I pushed the folder toward him. Page 5, Aunt May added. Interpol notice. Muller hesitated only a moment before opening the folder. He flipped to page 5. His eyes scanned the document, then flicked up to Ryan's face. The name on the notice was Milos Kolar. The photo was Ryan's face, younger, harder, but unmistakable. Interesting, Muller murmured. Ryan's smile thinned. Deepfakes are very convincing these days, he said quickly. Anyone can forge a PDF. Then you won't mind if we check it, Aunt May said calmly. She lifted the USB so everyone could see it. This contains a recording. Harold hiring him to marry and kill Hannah, the same way he arranged her mother's accident. Transfers, motives, everything. And just so you know, this isn't the only copy. If we don't walk out of this bank alive and free, it gets sent to Swiss police, regulators, and every major newspaper in the country. That last part was a lie, but I repeated it with my eyes, not my mouth, staring straight at Muller. He studied us, then looked at Harold, who was starting to sweat, and at Ryan, whose jaw had gone rigid. Finally, he nodded once. Mr. Hoffman, he said, take everyone to the conference room upstairs. Bring your laptop. The conference room at the top floor felt like a different universe. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the lake and the city, polished wood table, leather chairs. 2 security guards in dark suits stood by the door. Muller sat at the head, Hoffman beside him with the laptop. On one side of the table, Aunt May and I. On the other, Ryan and Harold, who now looked more like a trapped animal than a powerful businessman. Let's be efficient, Muller said coolly. Mr. Hoffman, please open the USB. Hoffman plugged it in. Which file? He asked. The one labeled recording, Aunt May said. A list of files appeared on the screen and he clicked. After a burst of static, Harold's voice filled the room, unmistakable, recorded in some hidden corner years of rage compressed into a few minutes. I don't care how you do it, Milos. I paid you half already. Marry her, get her to sign whatever the Swiss need, then I want every last cent out of that vault. The girl is like her mother, asks too many questions. Make it an accident on the honeymoon, a fall, a drowning. I don't want to hear about her again, understood? Then Ryan's voice answered without the smooth Western polish, his natural Eastern European accent cold and businesslike. Consider it done. Once the clause is triggered and the assets are liquid, the girl is just collateral. The recording clicked off. Silence crashed down. Harold lurched to his feet. That's fake, he shouted, face flushed. They stitched that together. I'm the victim here. He tricked me. She tricked me. Ryan didn't move. He just sat there, eyes dark, jaw clenched. Muller pressed something under the table. An alarm, I realized. We will let the police and forensic experts decide what is or isn't fake, he said. In the meantime, this bank will not be complicit. What happened next exploded in seconds. Ryan moved with assassin speed, not husbandly concern. He vaulted across the table, sending Hoffman's laptop crashing to the floor, and grabbed me from my chair. An arm like a steel bar locked around my throat. With his other hand, he flicked open a small folding knife, the cold metal kissing the skin beneath my scarf. "Nobody moves," he snarled, his polished accent gone, replaced by the rough growl of Milos. The security guards jerked their guns up, but froze when he pressed the blade harder. "Back off!" he barked. "Clear me a path to a car, or I open her throat right here in your fancy glass box." Harold scrambled backward, hands in the air, eyes wide. "Please," he babbled. "Don't hurt me. I mean her. I'll cooperate, I swear." Ryan twisted to look at him with pure contempt. "You think I'm going down alone?" he spat. "You ordered her mother's death. You hired me to finish the job." That was all I needed. In his fury at Harold, his grip on me loosened just a fraction. Aunt May saw it too. She snatched the heavy water glass in front of her and smashed it down on Ryan's knife hand. He yelled, the blade jerking away from my neck. I stomped as hard as I could on his foot and slammed my elbow into his ribs. The guards surged forward. In a blur of fists and shouts, they slammed Ryan against the floor and wrenched his arms behind his back. The knife skidded under the table. Harold bolted for the door only to run straight into 2 Swiss police officers in dark blue uniforms rushing in response to the alarm. Within minutes, Harold was handcuffed, still protesting, "It's all lies. I'm innocent." Ryan, Milos, sat cuffed in a chair, face bleeding from a cut where he'd hit the table, eyes flat as stone. A police officer read him his rights and mentioned an existing Interpol warrant. He didn't argue. He just stared at the floor like a man calculating years instead of dollars. A policewoman knelt beside me, gently peeling back my scarf to check the shallow cut on my neck. "You're safe now," she said in careful English. "We'll get you to a doctor." I nodded, though my legs were still shaking so hard I wasn't sure I could stand. Aunt May squeezed my hand until I felt the warmth of it through the fog. Across the table, Müller looked older, his composure cracked. "Miss Surya," he said, approaching us. "On behalf of Bank von Tobel, I can only express my deepest regret for what happened today." I met his eyes, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Your regret doesn't bring my mother back," I said. "But it can help make sure what she left me is protected." He swallowed. "We will cooperate fully with the authorities," he said. "The power of attorney Mr. Blake, Mr. Kolar, presented will be revoked. Your assets are safe. We'll transfer everything into a new account under your sole control with the highest security measures. No one will be able to touch your inheritance without your explicit consent." "Good," I said, "because after this, I'll be moving every cent out of this bank. And if anyone asks why, I'll tell them exactly what happened in this room today." For a moment, Müller's professional mask slipped, revealing raw alarm. Then he nodded stiffly. "We will facilitate any transfer you request," he said. The police escorted Aunt May and me out through a side entrance, away from the main lobby where customers still came and went, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded under their feet. Outside, the winter air felt sharper, cleaner. Across the street, a police van door slammed shut. I caught a final glimpse of Ryan's profile inside, his eyes still empty, and of Harold beside him, pale and shaking. The van pulled away into traffic, taking them both toward a future where they'd finally have to answer for what they'd done. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing clouds of steam, Aunt May's arm around my shoulders. "Is it really over?" I asked quietly. Aunt May looked at me with tired, kind eyes. "The worst of it, yes," she said. "Your mother's killers are in custody. Her evidence is safe. You're alive. That's more than she got." I swallowed hard. "Then this is where I start again," I said. "Not as someone's naive bride, but as the woman my mother raised me to be. And that's why I'm telling you this now. If a stranger ever whispers a warning that makes no sense, don't dismiss it too quickly. If you were in my place that night in the restaurant, would you have trusted her? Tell me in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, true or almost too crazy to be true, hit like and subscribe. For me, this wasn't just a story. It was the night my honeymoon turned into a fight for my life, and the beginning of everything that came after.